Years ago, a friend of mine had purchased an old home down in Toronto. It was an old Victorian-style home, very narrow, very high. 3 levels, including an attic. So he had moved in, and everything seemed fine. He had to clean out some things that were left behind in the home, and he noticed there were some strange things left up in the attic. There was an old chest there. He opened it up and went through. There was some clothing. He found some little jars with a lot of dust in there and some little knickknacks and things. And then he pulls out of the bottom of this chest a piece of board, maybe about an inch thick, maybe 4 inches wide, maybe I don't know, a foot and a half long. And there were 2 hooves that were nailed to this board. So I thought it was kind of strange, and so anyway, put everything back in and put it aside and spoke to the realtor and said, hey, whoever was here before, if they want to come back and pick up these things, just let me know, and I'll bring them down for you. So the realtor finally contacted him after a couple of days and said, no, you know what, whatever you got there, just throw it out if you'd like. And he says that no one's going to be coming back for that. So he decided to leave it up in the attic for a little while and clean things up. It was very dusty up there, a lot of cobwebs. The floor was very worn out. Now, this home was probably built early 19th century, maybe just, 1910, 1913, around there. And anyway, he liked those kind of homes, and his wife and him liked the architecture and whatnot. I've been there a couple of times to this house, and I tell you, it's very, very spooky, creepy. As soon as you walk in through the door, you feel like you're in another world. When you've got the wallpapered walls throughout the home, the light sconces on the walls. As soon as you walk in on your right, you've got the stairs that lead up to the second floor. And as soon as you start going up, they start to creak. The old doors, of course, they've all been refinished, but you can see with the glass inserts, they're very dated. The stair railings, so everything throughout the house is pretty old. It's very original. So, like I mentioned, he kept that chest and those belongings up there for a while, and things were okay, and there were no complaints. Got along with his neighbors, and everything was fine. But then one night, he said he was sound asleep, and suddenly he felt like somebody was in the room, and so he opened his eyes really quick, and he says he saw like a shadow standing at the foot of his bed. So he freaked out, he jumped up, and it disappeared. So he thought, maybe I'm having a bad dream, or just, I woke up too fast. There have been cases of people with sleep paralysis that have seen these visions of beings or other things in the room. So anyway, he chalked it up as that and went back to sleep. He said nothing to his wife. A few weeks later, he said again he was asleep, and suddenly he felt like he was being watched again. So he woke up, but he slowly opened up his one eye, and he looked over, and he saw a shadow cross the front of his bedroom door. So he just stayed in his bed for a little bit longer, and he got up very slowly, and he walked towards the door. And as he's walking towards the door, that one door upstairs that leads up to the attic is actually open. So he goes back into the room, and he tells his wife, look, I think there's somebody in the house. So this is at the time when there were no cell phones, so landlines. So his wife picked up the phone and actually called 911. A couple of minutes later, the police arrived, and he went down and met them at the door, brought him up, and he said, look, I was sound asleep. I felt like I was being watched. I felt that somebody was up here on this floor. He says, I got up, and I actually did see some shadows go by, And so I walked to the door and I looked, and my attic door is open, the door that leads to the attic. So the police went through, and there was no forced entry anywhere into the home. Not the front door, no broken windows, nobody came in through a basement or a window. So it looks like there was no forced entry. So they went upstairs, flashlights, everything. They looked around. While they're up there, he notices that the chest that he had pushed aside, that had all those belongings in it from the previous tenants, the chest was now in the middle of the floor. It was closed, but it had been moved. So he didn't say anything. And they continued conducting the investigation, the police. So they left, made the report, and that was that. A couple of weeks later, he wakes up and he hears someone dragging something upstairs. He doesn't wake his wife up. He goes to grab a flashlight, puts on his robe, goes upstairs, opens the door, and as he's coming up the stairs, he sees the chest sitting on the middle of the floor. But this time it's opened. And he freaks out and he starts aiming the flashlight around the attic, and there's no one there, and he starts to call out. And no one responds. So he goes over, closes the lid back on the chest, pushes the chest out into the corner of the room where he had originally left it, came downstairs, locked the door, went in his basement into his toolbox, and he got one of those sliding bolt locks. So he installed that really quick on the door, and he put a padlock. So the next day, of course, he gets up and he tells his wife what had happened. So she's concerned that, someone's maybe has a key to the house and, is coming through the place while they're asleep. But so they decide to change the lock. So they did that. Normally, a lot of people would do that when they purchase a new home right away, but I guess it hadn't crossed their minds, but they eventually did that. Changed the locks. So months have gone by. I haven't heard a thing. One night, he hears voices upstairs. They're not arguing, but they're kind of, back and forth. There's dialogue happening. So he's sitting there in his bed quietly listening. And he hears someone say, "Hey, it's your turn now." And he goes, "What?" Because I just heard someone say that. He goes, "What is happening?" So he gets up, and of course the padlock's on the bolt. So no one's gotten upstairs. So whatever's going on upstairs, there's someone upstairs. So he grabs the key, takes the padlock off, slowly slides the bolt over, and he opens the door. As he's opening the door creaks a little bit, and the talking stops. He slowly goes up the stairs, aims the flashlight, and he looks over, and the chest is not in the corner. It's in the middle of the floor again. He aims the flashlight around, and he starts asking, "Hey, who's up here? Enough's enough. I'm tired of these games. Show yourself." And nothing's happening. But then all of a sudden, he feels this weird vibe or this energy around him. So he's looking around, and in the corner of his eye, he catches a glimpse of a shadow dart right by him. So he turns around the other way, and again on the other side, another shadow darts back. So he's convinced somebody's up there. So he says, "Whoever you are, you need to show yourself. I'm calling the police again." So as he's backing up slowly, all of a sudden he feels like a cold breeze just on the back of his neck. And he stops. Turns around, and as he's aiming the flashlight, he doesn't see anything. But then he hears behind him a voice. And the voice says to him, "Get out." He turns around really quick, and he sees a shadow jump back into the chest. He freaks out, runs down the steps, locks the door, puts the bolt, puts the padlock, tells his wife what's happening, and he says to her, "We're not calling the police." He says, "This is just crazy." He says, "There's something otherworldly up there." He told her what he saw. So the wife, of course, got all scared and everything. So they went downstairs. This is the middle of the night, probably like 3, 4 in the morning. They had a coffee. They stayed up. They decided they were going to sell the house. That was going to take a little bit of time. So a few weeks had gone by. The for sale sign was up in the house. One night, his wife gets woken up all of a sudden. She said she felt like somebody put their hand on her arm. And she said she woke up very quickly because it didn't feel like her husband's hand at all. It was very cold, the feeling. And when she opened up her eyes, she said she saw standing right at the side of her bed a tall man with very piercing eyes staring down at her. So she screamed really loud. Her husband woke up, and of course, this thing disappears. They both start to pray. There's something really weird going on in that home right now. They feel a darkness getting darker and darker. The husband looks out, and he sees that the bolt is still on with the padlock on the door that leads to the attic. So they both grab a flashlight, open the padlock, slide the bolt over. They slowly go up the stairs. And there's the chest again, sitting in the middle of the floor, and it's opened. So they both start taking all the things out of there, all the contents. There were clothing, there were jars, there were some notes. There was that weird board with the hooves on it, looked like goat or something. They pulled everything out of that chest, put it all into a garbage bag. They brought it downstairs. Every time the wife attempted to bring the garbage bag outside, she would suddenly get hit with a bout of nausea. And she felt dizzy. And she came back inside with the contents. So the husband said, "I'm going to bring that outside. It'll stay out there until garbage day." So he grabs the garbage bag, opens the door. As he's walking past the threshold of the door outside, all of a sudden he starts getting a dizzy spell, and he starts to throw up. Wife's thinking of calling an ambulance and taking him to hospital. The husband's like, "You know what? This has something to do with what's in these contents. This needs to be thrown out." Just as they're saying that, the garbage bag rips open on the side, and one of the hoofs sticks out. His wife starts to freak out. So he grabs another bag, drops that bag into that other one, ties it up really tight, and leaves it inside the door, just on the inside. Garbage day was a couple of days away. They get up in the morning, looking to take that garbage bag and put it out to the curb. The bag's not there. So they ask each other, maybe did you put it somewhere temporarily? Did you throw it out? Did you? But then the husband says, "You know what? I have a good idea where this might be." So they both went upstairs, back to the attic. As they're coming up the stairs, there's the chest. It's closed. So he pries it open again, and there's the bag inside the chest. And as they're standing there looking at all this, they hear a voice behind them saying to them, "We've given you many warnings. You need to leave. This is not your home."